TFA fam, welcome in. It is a early look at the week 3 waivers. A lot of injuries, a lot of craziness. We had some fantasy bonanzas today as well. So, okay, without further ado, we do have the Sunday night game going on right now. So let's just jump right into it. Hit the folks with the QB streaming options for week 3.
Yeah, I think it's Derek Carr. Leads things off here. Derek Carr and the Saints have been phenomenal through 2 games of the season. He's still only rostered 19% of leagues, but Carr this week only completed 11 of 16 passes, but for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 1 interceptions against the Cowboys. We also added another 1 yard touchdown run as well. So the Saints have really put up really solid performances each of the last 2 weeks, and it's been kind of a shame because they really haven't had to push the ball too much in the second half because they've been blowing teams out. They did it today against the Cowboys, and they had 35 points by halftime. But Carr now has back-to-back games with 20 plus fantasy points. The Saints now take on the Eagles at home next week. So Derek Carr continues to look a lot better. This new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, hats off to him because he's done a much better job of really putting this team in a much better spot. It really hasn't turned out well so far for Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed has been really good, but overall, Derek Carr continues to play really well. And obviously, if you had Alvin Kamara today, you're feeling really good about yourself with the monster performance he had. Second game of his career where he's had 4 touchdowns. So let's keep moving here. Let's move on to the next one, and that is Sam Darnold, 13% roster. They do get Houston next week. Darnold continues to play well through 2 games. This is one of the more surprising considering it was against the 49ers. Darnold threw for 260 yards and 2 scores. He also added 32 rushing yards on 5 carries, good for 21 fantasy points. We will need to see the status of Justin Jefferson because he left that game, but as long as he's good to go, I think Sam Darnold makes for a really solid option. And we kind of talked about it this morning that I do think Sam Darnold is going to be a legitimate streaming option you can look at week in and week out because we kind of saw it last year with the Vikings that Kevin O'Connell has done a really good job with his scheme and really being able to produce fantasy points for our fantasy quarterback. So Sam Darnold continues to look like that guy as well, and they did it without Jordan Addison. They also did it without obviously T.J. Hawkinson. So I think only better things are ahead for Sam Darnold. And while it's not the best matchup against Houston, it's not one that I think this one could be a little bit high scoring and probably open up as a high total. So Sam Darnold's another option. Geno Smith, 34% rostered. Geno had a decent start to the season this week. This week against a good Patriots defense, he completed 33 or 44 passes, 327 yards, and a touchdown. He also scored 18 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. They do get a matchup next week against Miami. Obviously, Miami's probably going to be without Tua Tagovailoa, so that does concern me a little bit because maybe they don't need to push the pace that much. But we kind of felt that way again this week against the Patriots, and he still put up a decent fantasy day. And then Deshaun Watson, again, don't feel real great about this one, but 25% rostered. Next week they do get the Giants. While it was an improvement from last week, that is also a really low bar considering how poorly he played. He completed 22 of 34 for 186 yards and no touchdowns. He also rushed 5 times for 20 yards and a rushing touchdown. He finished with 15 fantasy points. Next week, like I said, the Browns get a matchup against the Giants, who have allowed the 13th most fantasy points to quarterback so far. They also have a favorable upcoming schedule with games against the Giants, Raiders, Commanders, and Eagles. But I also feel like you'd have to be a little desperate to play Deshaun Watson because he still hasn't looked great. But I think for me, those are kind of the top 4 guys that are available in less than 50% of leagues.
Let's go ahead and move it on over to the running backs. Obviously, the big injury we had was Isaiah Pacheco. We still don't know the extent of it, but he was seen leaving the field or leaving the, I guess, like once the game was over, he left with crutches and a walking boot, which is never a good sign. So the top ads this week are going to be that backfield with Carson Steele and Samaje Perine. I think this is going to be a split here between these two. Carson Steele would get the nod for me ahead of Samaje Perine because I do see Steele being the early down back. Perine is going to come in as the pass catching back. Both are definitely worth picking up. Samaje Perine, particularly if you are in a full PPR league. But regardless, you want a piece of this offense. So both are going to be worth picking up. Like I said, I would lean Carson Steele here. Did want to throw this one out really quickly. Ty Chandler, I feel like I've been talking about him every week. He's just under the 50% threshold we look for on ESPN, but over on Yahoo, he's available in more than 70% of leagues. If he's out there, he's definitely someone I'm throwing into the ads here as well. He has standalone value. He's been splitting time with Aaron Jones. You can feel okay about throwing Chandler in as like a emergency RB2 flex type play. But then obviously, if anything were to happen to Aaron Jones, he is looking at a bell cow type of role. So if Ty Chandler is out there, definitely adding him as well. Bucky Irving, throwing him into the ads for this week, starting to creep in on Rashad White's touches. He saw more involvement early on in today's game compared to last week against Washington. White is still seeing the field more overall than Irving is. He's running more routes than he is. It was going to cap Bucky's ceiling, but late in the preseason, the coaches came out and said that this backfield could be a hot hand type of backfield. So it's really not crazy to think that Bucky could overtake this backfield and at least be the one who's leading them in carries. I still think, until they feel better about Bucky Irving as a pass blocker on passing downs, that it's still going to be Rashad White in there. But I could see a scenario where it ends up being Bucky Irving is leading this team in like the early down work, and then Rashad White is kind of more of a passing down type of back. So Bucky Irving definitely worth an ad as well. Justice Hill, he continues to play well. Derrick Henry had his moments today, but like overall just did not, this felt like this is going to be a great spot for him. Obviously, the Raiders came away with a big win in Baltimore, but Justice Hill is definitely someone who needs to be on more squads. And then kind of like the handcuff plus area here, Khalil Herbert. Obviously, he's the guy here. Rashawn Johnson was a healthy scratch last week. We saw Herbert get into the end zone in the first half of the Sunday night game. So he's the guy to have there behind DeAndre Swift and has some standalone value as well. Antonio Gibson, I didn't put him in the ads. He obviously had himself a really nice day today. Looked better as a runner than Ramondre Stevenson did. But Stevenson still absolutely dominated the workload there for the Patriots. It feels really chasey to go after that as well. But obviously, with a performance like he had today, you feel a little bit better about having him at least on your bench. And if anything were to happen to Stevenson, Antonio Gibson would step into a bigger role. Rico Dowdle is kind of like in the midland here in terms of whether or not he's going to be available. I'm assuming in 12-team leagues, he's probably not out there in most competitive leagues, but I threw him in here. It's been like a true 50-50 split between him and Zeke. He's someone else who, probably has some standalone value, and Zeke could turn to absolute dust at any given moment. So you can look for Rico Dowdle. Marshawn Lloyd was active for his first game today. Didn't get much in terms of the workload. That was absolutely dominated by Josh Jacobs, but he's going to start to be worked in here a little bit more. So Marshawn Lloyd worth a stash. Your handcuff backs, Braylon Allen, Trey Sermon, Tank Bigsby, Tyler Algier. All those guys are widely available. I'm assuming Braylon Allen's going to be a popular name with him going out and putting up 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't go crazy on him just because this obviously is Brees Hill's backfield, but in terms of a handcuff, he looks really good and is probably one of the more important handcuffs to have in all of football. Tank Bigsby, obviously, he got injured today on that massive hit, but he's still worth a look as a handcuff. He might be someone who slides through waivers because he did nothing in terms of fantasy points today. So he might slide through. He might be someone you can look to grab after your waivers actually run. And then a couple deep ads, Jaleel McLaughlin, Isaac Garendo, Tyrone Tracy Jr. With Garendo, obviously we had the news come in the other day with Christian McCaffrey being put on the IR. Then we got more news just today that it's looking like it's going to be at least 6 weeks for CMC, which is not great. Obviously, Jordan Mason has been dominating that backfield for the Niners, but he's someone who's struggled a little bit with injuries himself. So if you're in a deeper league, or if you have a couple bench spots, or because you putting guys on IR like Puka, and maybe you're dropping Marquise Brown now with the news coming out that he's probably not going to be returning this year. Isaac Garendo is someone that you can look at as as a stash in case anything happens to Jordan Mason.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was actually really impressed with Braylon Allen, and he's starting to lean more towards the handcuff plus because like he saw 4 targets today. I think this is something that they talked about over the preseason, that they don't want to run Brees Hall into the ground and make him be somebody who has a ton of touches. So I don't think Braylon Allen's going away. I think he's going to continue to take away touches, and it is going to be frustrating at times for Brees Hall owners because I do think he's going to snipe away some touchdowns from you. But he did look really good. And you're right. If something were to happen to Brees Hall, he is going to be a slam dunk. So really like Braylon Island. So let's move over to the wide receivers. And I thought the top two guys I wasn't going to be talking about because I figured they'd been rostered in too many leagues. But Rashid Shaheed only rostered in 59% of leagues. It's kind of a little bit above my cutoff, but I did want to mention him because he should be rostered in all leagues. He continued to shine today as he had another big day, hauling in four passes for 96 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 3 times for 13 yards. I said it last week. I'll say it again. And I just said it a second ago. She should be rostered in every single league. And we haven't even seen this team have to be pushed for an entire game yet because the way they've been able to get ahead. So Shaheed really looks like the real deal. And he was something that I was pounding the table for all offseason. And he continues to make everybody look right who was on the Rashid Shaheed bandwagon. So really like him. Next up is Khalil Shakir, again, another player that I talked about last week, but still only rostered in 48% of leagues. The Bills routed Dolphins on Thursday night. However, Shakir did have a decent day, hauling in all 5 targets for 54 yards. And this was a game that they completely destroyed them, and then really nothing could. They really didn't need to throw the ball that much. And the Bears, Shakir led the team in targets, receptions, and yards. Shakir continues to be the team's wide receiver one, and I do think higher volume days are ahead with matchups against the Jags, Ravens, and Texans coming up. Next up, did not think we were going to be talking about this, and it's kind of funny because me and Cody messaged each other as this was happening because we actually had in the early morning start sit show a question about Quentin Johnston, and we did not go there. And Quentin Johnston, well, had a pretty good day. Wasn't a monster day yardage wise, but he did convert 2 touchdowns. He finished with 5 catches on 6 targets for 51 yards and 2 scores for 22 fantasy points. He now has 11 targets over the last 2 games, and these were both games the Chargers had in hand. While last season was an absolute bust of a season, Quentin Johnston has the talent to turn things around and could end up really being this team's wide receiver one. Always remember this team is really always going to be run heavy, but there's going to be games where they're going to have to open up the offense. They're going to throw the ball a lot more. And if Quentin Johnston can keep taking these steps, he's only rostered in 7% of leagues. I do think that maybe we could see a bounce back for Quentin Johnston. I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, this was a first round pick last year. Obviously, it was a massive bust last year, but it was really encouraging to see what he did today. I mean, and one of those plays, I mean, he absolutely burnt J.C. Horn, who's a quality corner, for a touchdown. So, Quentin Johnston, maybe he's going to be a thing this year. Let's keep moving. Cooper Kupp left with an injury today. Not really sure how long this is going to be, but he did leave with a walking boot. Now, like I said, this is a team that just put Puka Nacua on IR last week, and now looks like they could be without Cooper Kupp for an extended period of time. Kupp has dealt with a lot of ankle injuries, so hate to see this, but Robinson finished with 2 catches for 50 yards. He did haul in a 41-yard pass, but either way, I do think he's in line for an uptick in targets against the 49ers next week. I think he's a decent flex option, but man, this wide receiver room is extremely, extremely thin. So let's keep it moving. Let's move over to Jalen Tolbert, rostered in 4% of leagues. Tolbert was one of my sleepers heading into the season. While he was absolute cheeks in week 1, Tolbert was one of the bright spots as he brought in 6 of 9 targets for 82 yards. The Cowboys are extremely thin at pass catchers, and Tolbert had his strong camp. It looks like he could be a contributor in this offense. And that's kind of what I liked about him. Obviously, this is going to be a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. They don't have a great running game. And Jalen Tolbert was locked in as kind of being this team's number 3. But he does have the talent, former 3rd-round pick, that he could end up being like this team's number 2 pass catcher here. So I do like Jalen Tolbert, and I do think he is definitely worth an ad. Next up is Jerry Jeudy, rostered in 41% of leagues. He caught 5 of 6 targets for 73 yards in the Browns' Week 2 win against the Jags. He has now seen 14 targets over his last 2 games. He has back-to-back double-digit performances. Browns' offense hasn't been great, but with their upcoming schedule, he should be a decent wide receiver 4 or 5 with the amount of volume he's currently seeing. And then lastly, Jalen Naylor. Played him in DFS today, rostered 1% of leagues. With Addison out, Naylor made the most of his opportunities. He hauled in all 3 of his 4 targets for 54 yards and a touchdown for 14 fantasy points. He has now scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. While the Vikings dealing with so many injuries to their pass catchers, Naylor will continue to have a useful role within this offense. So he really could be the team's number 1 wide receiver next week if Justin Jefferson were forced to miss. And lastly, the deeper league type guys, Alec Pierce. I decided to put him on here. The Colts overall had a really rough day with their 16-10 loss to the Malik Willis-led Packers. Anthony Richardson struggled, but he continues to show his rapport with Alec Pierce. He was targeted 7 times today. He caught 5 of them for 56 yards and a score. He's now scored 21 and 16 PPR points the last 2 games. The issue I have with him is more Josh Downs was a full participant in practice. And once he comes back, I do think that is going to limit Alec Pierce. And so I'm not in love with Alec Pierce like a lot of other people are. Um, but Dontavian Wicks is another option. He caught a touchdown today after really underperforming. And listen, I don't love any of the Packers pass catchers. I know that they were able to get this win today, but I mean, Malik Willis was better than I thought he was going to be. But this is still going to try to be a very low volume pass offense. But Jordan Love is probably only going to be out for another week or two. And once he comes back, I do think there's better days ahead for Dontavian Wicks. It could be a useful option later. Wandell Robinson is PPR only option for me, but he did score a touchdown today. Just don't love this offense very much. And a lot of these other guys are kind of where I'm at with them. Michael Wilson, I think, had a nice little play today, but he's still probably third or fourth in pecking order in terms of targets. Jalen Polk had a decent day today, and these other guys are more late round. We'll just kind of wait and see with these guys. Something like Adonai Mitchell, I think there's some upside there, but this Colts passing attack has been really brutal over the first 2 weeks of the season, and it's a little concerning with any of these guys because Michael Pittman as well has been absolutely dreadful at this point. And so this Colts offense needs to figure out a way to turn this thing around in terms of their passing game because their passing offense has been awful.
Yeah, has not been great, Bob. Wrap things up with week 3 tight end streams, kicking things off with Hunter Henry, who had an absolute massive day. He had 109 of the 149 passing yards, or receiving yards, rather, for the Pats today. It counts for over 70% of the receiving yards. He commanded a 50% target share. Obviously, those numbers are not sustainable in any way, shape, or form, but there is a matchup coming up against the Jets on Thursday night. CJ Mosley potentially could be missing for the Jets as well, which would help out Hunter Henry here at tight end. So he's worth a look. Kev, you were just talking about all the issues and injuries with the Rams. So Colby Parkinson obviously in play here as well. Didn't do much today, but bigger days could be coming ahead with all those injuries that they have. Luke Schoonmaker, someone you mentioned on the Sunday show, basically did his best Ferguson impression, putting up pretty similar numbers and what you would expect from Jake Ferguson. Obviously, we have to wait to see if he's going to be officially out or not, but that's another place you can go. Brendan Strange, I threw here on the end. We don't yet know what's going to end up happening with Evan Ingram. If you had him today, if you were paying attention, he was ruled out during warmups with a hamstring injury. Obviously, that's something he dealt with a lot of injuries at his time with the Giants. I think we've kind of forgotten about it for the past couple of years because it hasn't been a thing, but that is something that he has dealt with and is in his history. So have to pay attention to that one. But the old Penn Stater came through today, 3 for 65. He ran 72% of the possible routes. He was second on the team with targets with 6, only behind Gabe Davis, who had 7, and he was second in receiving yards behind Brian Thomas, who put up all of his yards on 2 catches. So that is what I am looking at in terms of the tight end streams.
Yeah, it's been since we were talking about tight end, Walito here, it's been a bad year for tight ends. Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, Ingram, Njoku, nothing. Kittle had himself a day. Trey McBride had a really good day today too, but yeah, it's been really rough in the tight end street so far to start the season. I mean, you had the Isaiah Likely game last week, but yeah, it's been pretty brutal. But like, if you really peel back the layers, I guess though, and like last year, like what the highest fantasy points per game scoring was like 14 or 15, something like that, which is not necessarily great. So I don't know, maybe we should have expected this, but it's also 2 weeks into the season. Andrews was a little bit better today. Obviously Ingram didn't play today and Joku's out. So like some of those are things, but Kelsey, it's kind of what I said, like with Kelsey, that's kind of what my thoughts were with him is that they're just not going to heavily rely on him as much, I think, to start the year because they don't necessarily need to. He's going to play a little bit less of the snaps. And so I think there'll be some. I mean, there's obviously going to be some good Kelsey games. They've also played two pretty good defenses to start the year that are really familiar with the Chiefs, with the Ravens, and the Bengals. So I mean, it's also not a great run out either in those two situations. I mean, they have much better matchups ahead. So I do think Kelsey will start to have will come get back to being more of the player that we think that he is. But Robbie Jeffries, happy to see him here. Good Robbie. Should I give up Rudy for the Cowboys for my mental health? I feel like this was a very Cowboys game, right? Last week they come out, they dominate. This week they come out and just look like just the worst team in the league. I mean, this feels very, very Cowboys, right?
Very Cowboys. Very Cowboys. Also very Ravens today, too.
Yeah, for them to now 0-2 and the Bengals. The Bengals are always start the year slow. I think they Burrow is now 1-9 in weeks 1 and 2 and start his career. So I
Wow.
don't know why. It's just always seemed to start slow and then they turn it on. So Ash and Watson look good in real life. Yeah, wasn't great for fantasy, but if Sam Darnold streaming without Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson, I wouldn't feel great
I
about it without Jefferson.
But I think Jefferson plays from the
Yeah,
sounds of it. It sounds
yeah,
like it was only a late contusion. Probably just had like, had someone else's leg whip into him. If you weren't watching it, didn't see it, like it didn't look like it was like a bad like knee injury or anything like that. And I think they already kind of came out and said he was going to be day to day, so I would expect him to play. But in this system with O'Connell, like I think he can kind of dial up whatever. Who do they have next week? I actually wasn't paying attention while you were talking. Sorry.
the Texans.
Okay, so probably going to be playing from behind anyway, or potentially. So
Should I try and trade Kelsey? I would not. I think you, if you're going to trade him, you want to wait until he has a good game, right? Like you're
yeah,
trading him at the bottom of his value right now, and that's not the way to do it. Like I said, I think better days are ahead. They do play the Falcons next week on Sunday Night Football. So I mean, these were two of their tougher games they were going to have to play all year. I said they still have a matchup with the 49ers, and they have a matchup with the Bills, I think, but and the Texans late in the year. But a lot of their easier matchups are coming. And so I do think this offense is going to get better and better. I mean, it was a pretty sloppy day for the Chiefs, anyways. They probably shouldn't have won that game, honestly. I have Javonte Williams on my bench with Gibbs, Achan, Corum, and Aaron Jones as my other running back. Would you recommend dropping for Braylon? I think you probably could. Like, I don't know. It's I don't want to overreact because 2 weeks because like that offense just looks terrible. Like, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Sean Payton is a fraud. Sean Payton is not a good coach. Like, I didn't think he was when he was coming, and I thought it was a really bad move whenever he came to this offense or whenever he came over here. I feel like he was very much owed his career to Drew Brees, and he's very much a fake sharp because his offense now through 2 seasons just looks awful, which looks dreadful. Decisions he makes at times, this like where we draft Marvin Mims, we talk him up, but we never let him play. Like I don't know what they're doing, and like their late game management today, like when they punted the ball, uh, and then they kicked the ball off at the end of the game, and I mean the game was over at that point instead of going for a two or an onside kick. Like I don't know what they're doing at all there in Denver, but uh, I'm nervous about it. But they've also had really not great matchup. Obviously, Pittsburgh's defense again looks absolutely elite, but I think you could drop Javonte Williams. I probably wouldn't because he is at least guaranteed touches, where Braylon Allen's still going to be a little bit more flimsy, um, or a little more fluky, not flimsy. But
either
it's
way.
getting really close to that point, though, with Javonte Williams. I will say that. It's getting really close to that point where you probably could just drop him or Jaleel McLaughlin at this point. So,
Yeah, Jaleel McLaughlin for sure, but I think I would keep Javante and drop Corum for Braylon.
yeah, I'm okay with that. Marvin Harris Jr. with the huge week. Yes, big bounce back game from him today. It's funny because we were talking about that and we obviously joked about it all week with all the on Twitter, all these people losing their minds saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. is slow and he only ran 16 miles an hour and all this stuff. And now just came out and absolutely exploded like he is because he's a baller. So
Yeah, that buying window closed real quick.
yep. Yeah. Adam, how about Ramondre this year? Legit bell cow? Yeah, I think so. I think he is going to absolutely, and that's what they said. That's what Gerard Mayo said before the year started that he was going to be their workhorse back, and that's exactly how they treated him. So, um,
Until teams are able to push them, you can expect this. Like their schedule this year is brutal, but they've obviously done well for the first 2 weeks. So like as long as they're keeping it close, yes, I like it's going to be legit workload for Ramondre.
yeah. Jr. I got to drop Mark Cooper. Terrible. Yeah, he was awful. It was a really gross game. I mean, they almost allowed the Jaguars to come back on them. Didn't happen, but it got really close. But again, another player that I think I'm holding, or because I don't think you can't move him right now, and you're not dropping him. So Christian Kirk, what do we do? It's just the Jaguars in general. Their offense looks terrible. I mean, Trevor Lawrence looks awful. The generational quarterback hasn't looked so generational.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, I will say, I'm not trying to give it passes, but the Browns defense is legitimately one of the best defenses in the league, and so it obviously wasn't great. Probably should have put more stock into that when it comes to everybody else, but so far this hasn't been good. And why, I don't know. I was looking at this earlier. Like, why are we giving Gabe Davis 8 targets, and we're seeing Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas get like 2 or 3 targets? Like, what are we doing? Have we not learned that Gabe Davis is nothing more than an occasional deep threat? Like, I don't understand what they're doing there and their way they're distributing their targets there whatsoever. So I was pretty perplexed with that. JSN or Olave rest of season? It's going to be Olave. I get it. It's been a real question, but like I said, this is a team that hasn't really had to do much. They pretty much handled games, had games in hand, and after the first half and both their starts. So I don't think that's going to be the case every single week. So Olave's, I think, are better days ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I saw the comments here at the bottom of the chat about a Mixon injury, so I'm trying to look to see the how bad it looked. Looks like maybe it was a hip drop tackle. So far, I've only seen like one Twitter doctor chime in that says looks like a mild high ankle sprain for Joe Mixon. So if
Well,
that's the case, I mean, I like Cam Akers, honestly. I thought he's looked more explosive than Damian Pierce, but I think Pierce will get the first crack at it. I don't know what's happening right now.
I
Does,
think Pierce was a healthy scratch, wasn't he? I don't think
oh,
Pierce
was
played
he?
today. Yeah, I don't think Damian Pierce. I think.
Okay, well, there's your answer. Cam Akers.
Yeah, could you imagine? But I don't feel great about any of it. But
I thought he looked pretty decent in the preseason.
let's see. Yeah, Texas declared Dave. Yeah, okay, that's right. I want to verify that I was right on that. But yeah, Davy Pierce was a healthy scratch, or was
Okay.
out. Or let me rephrase
Can't.
that. Pierce was dealing with it's his ankle injury. Okay, so it wasn't a healthy scratch. He was out.
Okay.
Either way, yeah. So like, I mean, would one of these be a priority ad for you?
I mean, depending on the severity of it, I mean, I think Akers absolutely moves up into priority ad. Yeah. I mean, if Damian Pierce is banged up and if Mixon's going to be out, it's what Akers and Ogunbowale.
Yeah.
So, and this offense, absolutely.
Would you still make Carson Steele a priority?
Yeah, I would still have Steele over Akers, but Akers would be right there.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Britton, I have a trade offer. I would get Likely and Jerome Ford. I would give up Sutton and Deontay Johnson. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Wait.
if you're going to be without Cup, that might be.
Yeah, that's going to make you really thin.
Yeah.
Though I don't have any optimism whatsoever for at this point Deontay
Yeah.
Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, you're not feeling great about plugging either of those guys into your lineup, but
Yeah, so Clyde is actually on the NFI list. He's dealing with mental health issues. I guess that's what it is because they mentioned that this is a situation where the Chiefs didn't actually have to pay him while he was on this, but they decided to continue to pay him. That's why I know that. So it's mental health issues. He's dealing with, I guess, anxiety and a bunch of other stuff. So that's why you haven't seen any Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And so I don't. You're not going to all of a sudden see him now. And so he's not the one to pick up.
yeah.
And then was there anything else here?
Um,
Oh, would you trade Ayuk and Rice for Jamar Chase? No.
I would not.
Rashee Rice is going to be I think, top 10 wide receiver this year. Like everybody that bought low and got the suspension scare discount is hitting an absolute grand slam with Rashee Rice. And
Yeah.
now they utilize him a little bit more on the deeper end today, which is not something they typically did with him before. Before he was much more of a sit underneath option, and then today they hit him for a deep touchdown. Like I think there's a legit shot that, like I said, like he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver.
Sean traded Jamar Chase for AJ Brown. Was that a good move?
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think a
Better.
lot of that's going to depend on how long AJ Brown might be out with this hammy. But like in a vacuum, I'm fine with it. It's now just going to depend on how much longer will AJ Brown be out. So I thought it was weird that he was ruled out as early as he was. So
Yeah. Drop Terry McLaurin? No. Yeah, we're not dropping Terry McLaurin. I get it. He's been. I would bench him for sure. Like he's not starting. I'm not starting him, but I'm not dropping him either. It's way too early for that. It's just. Um. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Giving Bijan Robinson, Michael Pittman, receiving Tyreek, Josh Jacobs, and Mark Cooper. What do you guys think? I would if Tua didn't get hurt, I would probably be much more excited about this and this trade. But I am not. Probably would do it. I don't know.
I
I have
think
no
I would.
idea how long Tua is going to be out.
Yeah, I think I would still do it, but you obviously don't feel as like excited about it. Because Jacobs is going to be a bell cow, so it's. I mean, I prefer Bijan, but it's kind of a wash there, and I prefer even without Tua. Like I, if we whenever we're doing our rankings this week, I'm still going to have Tyreek Hill ahead of Pittman.
Well, yeah. I mean, I might not even have Pittman ranked anymore. I'm about done with that whole situation. What's he with Rashad White? It's kind of what we thought, right? Really bad as a runner. Excels as a pass catcher. Got a little dinged up today, but obviously this was a stone cold worst matchup. Like I said, the Lions going into this, that's why we had Rashad White ranked so low. Was because this was a really bad matchup for Rashad White. Really, anytime any Lions going against the Lions is not one that I want to play against. So. And then lastly, Matt, who's the pickup of mixing out? I still think it's Carson Steele. We kind of talked about it. He would be the number one option. I mean, he's rostered in like 1% of leagues, so he's going to be the number one player for anybody.
Yeah.
But as far as the Texans are concerned, right now, I still have to think it's Cam Akers because this team just doesn't. Damian Pierce doesn't fit the type of offense that they run. Like he's not a good outside zone scheme runner, and he doesn't really fit this type of offense. So that would be my concern there.
Yep.
Kalen, which would it be better to pick up Baker or Carr over him? Just in terms of for next week, it would be Carr for me.
Craigslist have Jordan Mason, Hurts, Lamb, London, Hall, Connor, ETN, McConkey, JMO, Benson, Garendo, Ferguson. Which players should I offer for McCaffrey?
None. I'm not in the business of. I don't really love trading for hurt players and a player that's going to be out that might be out for 6 weeks. Like this could be longer than that. I just don't love it. And you're creating it'd be different if it's later. If this was later in the year and like okay, your team's 7-2 and you're cruising to the playoffs and stuff like that. This is not that right now. And just looking at your roster, I mean, you have some other issues, anyways. I mean, obviously, love Hurts. CeeDee Lamb's going to be good. Drake London hasn't played well so far. ETN. I mean, this isn't like it's way too early in my mind to trade for a player that's going to be out for up to 6 weeks, and you are potentially going to have to give up still something substantial because nobody's just going to give them to you. And so you're still going to have to trade something of pretty significant value, probably still to get him, and it could really just create a big hole for your roster.
Yeah, I don't see anything obvious that stands out to me. Because I was going to suggest Benson. I was going to say, hey, go see if the Connor owner, but then I realized you have Connor already. So there's nothing you can really do there. Like, no one's going to take your handcuffs for McCaffrey. I mean, McConkey would maybe be it, but that would be the only one that I'm looking at on that roster that might fit.
Yeah. Is there hope for Ayuk? Yes. One, this is a really bad matchup. The Brock Purdy really struggles against pressure, and that is something that that's something that I was worried about heading into this game, was because Brian Flores does an excellent job of bringing pressure, and that is something that Brock Purdy really struggles with at times. So, and Ayuk, obviously, I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. I mean, he missed pretty much all of preseason, all of training camp, and so he's going to take him a little time to get worked up. But this is just not. I mean, they did not look great today overall. Their offense didn't. So Howard Pacheco, it's not sounding great. Like, he's probably going to miss multiple weeks. I would guess. He basically got rolled up on his leg, got pinned under him, and he got ripped back. I think I saw that he's like on crutches or something like that after the game.
Crutches and a walking boot.
Yeah, so I would imagine he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks. But I do think that I would guess he's probably going to miss 2 or 3 weeks at this point. Hopefully that's it. So that's why I think Carson Steele makes probably the best waiver ad. So who would have thought? Amari Cooper, keep or let loose. You're going to keep him. You can't let him go. Hold Javante and Chuba. Yeah, you can drop Chuba if you had to, depending on other options. Like, again, with Jonathan Brooks coming back, and he's actually a really low key good, probably sell or buy low option. Actually, somebody that that's sitting on somebody's IR that maybe starting to get a little frantic, and somebody that if you are starting off in a really good spot 2-0 or whatever, I think he could be a really good. I think he's going to be a really good value later. Should we be worried about Cooper Kupp and Checo? Yes, definitely Cooper Kupp. Just Cooper Kupp's dealt with so many injuries. He's on the older side. It's just he continues to get these kind of injuries, and so yes, I would be definitely worried about Cooper Kupp, and Pacheco is probably going to miss a couple of weeks at least. So, just frustrating. So, Vikings, bruh. Yep. So that being said, this went a lot longer than I was expecting it to go, but that's fine. And I want to answer all your guys' questions. We'll be back again here really soon to get Vikings beat the 49ers last year. Yeah. Drop Spears. I'm a Pacheco owner. No, I would hold on to him. Anyways, that being said, let's go ahead and get out of here. Sunday night games are already going. We'll be back again shortly with our rankings videos. I'll be dropping kickers and defensive streams. My favorite video now of the week. We'll be dropping that here this week. I might try to find time if I can to do a buy low or sell high, buy low trade video. I would like to start getting some of those going as well, just because try to help people out. Now we're a few weeks into the season. So that being said, keep it locked in here. If you have any questions, you can join our Discord. That's absolutely free. That's been popping all the time. I can't even keep up with it anymore. But it is a very good place to be able to answer questions and get stuff there. If not, we'll be back again shortly with some more content. So have a good rest of the week. Hopefully you guys get those W's. We'll be back in next week. See you on the next one. Bye.